I would like to introduce our first speaker right now, Dr. Justin Boccardo.
Okay. How can we train residents in a better way? The last statistics about how many people will graduate from college with a bachelor's degree that are eligible for medical school is about 160,000 in the United States. Of those, about 17,000. So of the 17,000 kids that graduate from medical school, about 2,367 will enter a general surgery position, and then 1,146 will graduate from general surgery in the United States. It's a small piece of the pie. It all started in about 1890 with in Johns Hopkins, when doctors would graduate from medical school and thus start doing whatever they wanted to do, and they wanted to regulate a little bit the way people were trained into different parts of the medicine field, whether you would go into medicine itself, or surgery, or psychology. In 1890s, in Hopkins, they came up with what's called the residency pathway. You would graduate from medical school, you would get into one of these programs, and then be educated following one of the doctors that would know the craft from their experiences. The idea was that each doctor would have a specific set of skills that they would have acquired throughout a lifetime, and they would be able to transmit those skills to the students, and then, therefore, they would perpetuate the system. It goes a little bit with the idea of the 10,000 hours required for a mastery of any craft. If you've read the Outliers book, or if you've heard about it, people from Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Bill Gates, or any artist, for the matter of fact, it has been calculated that about 10,000 hours of good, excellent practice is required to master any craft. One would always say, against the idea of that practice makes perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. So how do we make this 10,000 hours count to make this perfect practice? Nothing easier, nothing better to explain a very complex thing with a nice quantum mechanics equation here. And I'm not going to explain quantum mechanics to you because I don't know half of it, but the interesting about quantum mechanics is that when it came out, it came out with the uncertainty principle. You cannot know when where a particle is going to be, or at a specific time, or the momentum it will have. When that came out, a lot of scientists said, wait a second, the quantum mechanics is wrong. The system is always altered when there's an observer in it. So that made me think. If we're observing these people that are getting out of medical school and how they do their craft, and we're trying to correct them, are we altering the system altogether? Should we give them more leeway on how they train, on how they do their craft into what they're doing? And so I chose to investigate this a little bit further with personality tests. Myers-Briggs, with Dr. Jung, came up with the idea that every one of us has all of these 8 components in their personality. But each one of us uses one over the other on a limiting period of your life. So that's how you come up with the idea of an extroverted person or an introverted person. That's the energy that drives you. How you manage information. Are you sensing or are you intuitive? How you make your decisions with that information. Are you a feeling person or are you a thinker person? Or in how you conduct your lifestyle. Are you a perceiving person or are you a judging person? When you combine all of these parameters, you come up with 16 distinct personalities. And you can choose your favorite one. I would have loved to be Einstein or maybe Batman, but actually I'm the comedian right here in the corner. So that's my personality. So with this personality test, what I did is I applied the personality, the modified Myers-Briggs to all of the residents in the hospital, and we came up with these results. Now, the blue lines are the residents, and the red lines are their comparison with the general population in the United States. And you can see that most of them are equal, except for the judging. It looks like you need to be judging in order to be in healthcare. When you go out there and you see how many of the judging parts of the personality are in healthcare, most of them belong to this group. Actually, when you reverse it and you do the personality test at this level of high school and you want to know what you're going to do or what you are fit for in the future, if you're a judging personality, you're a good fit for healthcare. So having said that, we have a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with in our residency program. I took it a step further, and then I got some of the work from Dr. Duckworth. She came up with the concept of grit. She's a psychologist that came up with this concept that grit is what she calls it, which is perseverance, outdoes IQ in any arena, from high school to college to graduate education. She's tested this at West Point with the military, and she's gotten a lot of testing around the country. And you can see how the curves cross. The dotted line is IQ, and a good IQ will get you so far, but if you do not have the perseverance, you will plateau. And that's where grit, or self-discipline, or perseverance wins. There's some tests available for this, so I applied the grit test to the residents, and I saw if the personalities matched the grit, and I was all over the place. There was no correlation, meaning certain personalities didn't mean that you were going to have more perseverance. So that was a moot point. So I couldn't go anywhere with that. Then I have a simulation lab where I can simulate different procedures. One of the most complex operations that we have in surgery is the repair of an abdominal aortic aneurysm. That's when a big vessel in the body enlarges and it can explode, so you have to change it. It's a very complex operation. It has several steps associated with it. Somebody that masters this operation has to not only understand the disease process, but also the different steps involved in that. And it's never a one-man job or a one-woman job. You need a team. And as a team leader that a surgeon is, you need to guide the team into the right direction in order to do this procedure successfully. So since the procedure wasn't difficult enough, what I decided to do was to create two different teams with the simulation. On the one team, I put an extroverted leader, and on the other team, I put an introverted leader. Paired with that, I put opposite assistants in each one of the groups. I identified those as leaders and assistants, and then I put two totally different personalities in the simulations, and I called them proctors. So the one proctor was supposed to go into a room and just give negative reinforcement, yell at them, a totally extrinsic stressor to the situation, try to distract them, try to tell them that what they were doing was wrong. None of the sutures were right. Everything they were doing was absolutely out of context. In the other room, the proctor was supposed to give them a calm environment, very kind of like Mr. Miyagi here. You're doing a good job. I'll lead you to the right path. Neither one of them was allowed to tell them what the next step was or to guide them to the procedure process. They had to know what they were doing and how to lead the team. They were instructed just to disrupt in different ways the simulation process. Also, they were asked, the proctors, to take notes of several things. One, can you identify the leader? I decided who the leaders were. I just wanted to see if the proctors were able to identify them, how quick it took them to identify the leaders, and I wanted them to see if they could tell me what kind of character each member of the team had. Once we were all said and done, the results, again, were nothing what I expected, but they were very interesting nonetheless. The team members, meaning the leader and the assistant, were very, very quickly identified with the stressor. The proctor that would yell at them, the proctor that was very disruptive in the operation, caused the team members to position themselves into those categories right away. The leader, the person that I identified as a leader, was a leader. The assistant acted as an assistant. Even though one was an extrovert and one was an introvert, they acted together as a team. It cohesed the team. Interestingly enough, the calm proctor was unable to do this. Even after several minutes in the room, he was unable to tell me who the leader was and what the different job descriptions of each one of the team members was. Another interesting point was that the knowledge, meaning we would ask them questions about the procedure, ask them questions about medicine, medical knowledge, was much better retrieved in a calm environment. Now, if you think about it, anybody here that has taken a test, you want to take a test in a very calm place, like a library or a test center. Nobody wants to take a test in a rock band concert or with people yelling at you. You're not going to do very well. So that kind of goes with what would have expected. In the calm environment, the team members acted all as equals. The leader never stood up as a leader, and the assistant never acted under the leader's position. Everybody was kind of equal. Their job descriptions kind of overlapped during the procedure. Some person would do something that I would have expected an assistant to do, and the leader was doing it. And I don't have a good explanation for that, but that was an interesting finding. What caught my attention here is that all of the introverts were perceived as poor character, were perceived as weak. However, the introverts did better. The introverts did better in any objective score that I had for them. They did better in medical knowledge retrieval, and they did better in the technical skills evaluations that I did. However, the subjective perception of the proctors was that they were the weaker link in the team. And all of the extroverts, instead of focusing on the complex procedure they had in hand, decided to engage the stressor. They wanted to fight the Hulk, as opposed to concentrating on what they had to do. So I took it a little step further, so I said, okay, so personality does not match grit, and introverts are perceived as weaker, but they do better in a stress situation. So why don't I do the grit study, but instead of the person answering the questions, let's ask the proctors to answer for the residents, meaning, do the proctors think the residents have perseverance, have grit? And look at this. Maybe this doesn't tell you much at first, but there's a direct correlation between the amount of years that somebody has spent in the program and how much grit the proctors think they have. Meaning, the more time we spend with somebody, the better we think they are. But that doesn't mean that they're better. It's just that we've invested so much time in them that we actually think that they have all the tools necessary to be good. You're not going to say that a senior is really, really bad. You've just spent all these years training them. They're okay, at the most. Now look at the first years. The first years, none of them are good. Nah, we just think they don't have it. They don't have what is needed to be a surgeon. The interesting thing is that when I ask the residents to do this, all of them have grit. All of them are 4 5s. Few of them are 3s. 5 is the highest grit score that you can have. So why is there a discrepancy between what we see on these people and what they think they are? I mean, they've gone through high school, college, medical school. They've entered one of the most competitive residencies out there. They have to have perseverance, yet when we see what they're able to produce for us, many of us think that they don't have it. So why are these perception gaps out there? Is there a personality issue that makes this interaction difficult? How can we decrease this observer effect? If we go back to that quantum mechanics, every time we see somebody, do we inhibit them by the way we act in the operating room or teaching them? Should these personality profiles be part of our resumes? Meaning, when you want to apply to a medicine residency, should we know what kind of personality you have? And with that, will that help us decide whether or not you're a good fit for this particular residency or for other residencies? Are there specialties that do better with certain personalities than others? Will that lead to discrimination? All the introverts will just go to psychology or psychiatry, and all the extroverts will go to surgery. Is that right? Is that good? We just saw that the introverts did better than the extroverts. The other thing that I'm interested in is how these different personality types interact with each other. Can we improve the interaction between introverts and extroverts, or introverts with introverts, or extroverts with extroverts? Each one of these personalities has been already defined, and we already know that they have specific deficits in how they interact in stress situations. Can we provide tools for these people to improve their goals, improve their outcomes? When do we start that? Do we start at the high school education level, or should we start it at the medical school education? Should we incorporate the grit score in residencies, meaning everybody thinks that they have what is needed to become a surgeon? Now, is it true? Should we do a grit score before you try to do it? Or do you have the perseverance that it's required to do it? We just saw that the IQ is not the most important thing, it's your self-determination to complete the task. Having said all this, it's a big world, we're all different. Diversity is what makes us great. The important thing, I think, to take home today is how to find the tools to mesh all of them together. Thank you very much.